Well, welcome again to Flame of Truth. I'm Pastor Dan Smith. I'm senior pastor at the La Sierra University Church in Riverside, California. And we're in the middle of a series on, we call Earthly Spirituality. It's about King David. Last week we wrestled with the great famous battle, the beginning of his career, sort of, the battle between David and Goliath, sort of a microcosm of the great battle between Christ and Satan. When Christ wins, we all win. If Satan had won, then we would have all lost. And all of that. And cut off their heads. God wants us to cut off the head of sin and just be done with it. Don't let it come back to life. Don't cower in the trenches anymore, worrying about the Goliaths in your life that intimidate you. Get out of the trenches and run towards that Goliath. Pick up some stones and hurl them and watch God aim them, and the battle is the Lord's, all of that. David and Goliath. Now today we want to look at the secret of the cave. What kind of caves have you been in? Maybe you're in a cave today, metaphorically. I was thinking about the Russian submarine many years ago that was sunk down several hundred feet of water. And 118 people were in there, but they know now that at least 23 were alive for a number of hours in one compartment before they all finally died. And there was a note from one writing to his wife, and he says, "I'm writing blind." He was in the darkness, down at the bottom of the ocean, in the middle of a submarine with no lights, no air running out, and he's writing a note to his wife in a cave. What would that be like? We were driving through Southern Oregon a little while ago at two young boys and just telling them stories about where I used to pastor. All kinds of stories, little country churches out in the middle of Southern Oregon. And every little street, every lane was another story. The boys just loved all my stories from Southern Oregon. I told them we had a man who in our church who used to be a well witcher. He's still there. And he had a big wire and he could go out and find water, he thought. Well, we had a big debate in our little small country church that was well witching, water dowsing. Was it of Satan or was it of God? He thought it was of God. God had given him this gift. Other people thought this was from Satan. Oh, big battle. Finally, the church voted that we would never use the water well witching. Well, our well ran out. We needed water. And so we said, we'll pray. God will send us someone to help us find water. Well, I came to church one Saturday morning, and here a lady in my church had paid, not for my church member, but for someone else to witch the whole place, and he had put stakes where he thought there would be water. Well, now some of my elders were mad, and one man got mad and went and kicked all the stakes over. So we had this battle all around me. Well, I didn't know what to do. I'm 25, 26 years old. No one covered this in the seminary. So that afternoon, we were at a big potluck, and one of these elders just began to blast me that I hadn't supported him. He was the one who kicked all the stakes down. He wanted me to agree that he did the right thing. Why? I wasn't sure that going out and kicking stakes over was the best thing to do at church on Sabbath and sort of undo this. There was another way to handle this. And he just blasted me in front of all these people. So I was in a cave. That night I had to still go down and play my trumpet with a trumpet trio, a pastor and another doctor, in front of 500-600 people in Medford, Oregon. We were playing Bugler's Holiday, and it was a tough song. And the number one first trumpet was a fellow pastor, and he ran out of lip and gas before the end of the song. He knew at the end of the song he had to play a high note, high C. So for a while, he didn't play at all. He just stood there holding his trumpet, but he wasn't playing. Oh, just disaster, complete disaster. Finally gathered up a big breath, played the last note, and we walked off that stage, just slunk away. We were so embarrassed in front of everybody. So on top of what happened in the morning, happened in the evening, I was in a cave. And I went home to an empty house. I was single, alone. I was pretty low in a cave. A few years ago, we were in Toronto for some meetings, my wife, and we had two babies at the time. And we were going through almost no sleep, just having a terrible time. One hotel room, two babies screaming all night long. My wife wasn't getting any sleep. It's terrible. We're in a cave. 1 o'clock one morning, the fire alarm goes off. We're 10 floors up. Do you go or do you stay? We find we better go, grab some clothes, grab keys and a wallet. I grabbed a baby. She grabbed one. Had to go down 10 floors in a fire escape. We're in a cave. Just difficult. I was with a friend of mine the other day. We were in high school together in Singapore years ago. And we remembered we were supposed to put on a music number one Saturday night, and a group organized, and a little risque. Maybe we were playing an old song called Tijuana Taxi by Tijuana Brass. Today it'd be nothing, but 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it was a little edgy. So we were playing trumpets and piano and drums and saxophone. So we got up in front of 100 of our high school classmates and began to play this song. And right down the center aisle, here came the principal. And he got in front of us, and he just went like this. Time to stop. A couple people began to quit, the piano, the drums. Finally, we quit, and the song just ground to a halt. Embarrassing in front of all my friends. I left that place in a cave. You know what I'm talking about, a cave. I thought about some people over the years who've gone through caves. What was it like for President Clinton to leave White House after all he had done with other problems through his presidency? And then he pardoned a group of people the night before he left. He took some furniture evidently they shouldn't have taken. And he's just being vilified. No chance to go back and be president again and do it over and redeem it. You just have to live with it. You made a mistake, many mistakes. President Nixon has to resign the presidency and get on a helicopter and fly out to California. First president to resign. What would that feel like? Al Gore, just barely miss an election, wondering what you could have done different, better, win your own home state. All these people have gone through caves, difficult times. Winston Churchill's prime minister, and then he goes through 10 years in the 1930s. Nothing, in a cave, in the wilderness. Doesn't matter anymore. Think of the athletes, Scott Norwood. I think I forget, Buffalo team, somebody misses a field goal. End of a Super Bowl, wide right, gone. You have to live with that. You cost your team a Super Bowl championship. You're in a cave. Other athletes, maybe you've been in a cave. Think of all the people in my church right now in caves. People having their house foreclosed on, people going through a divorce, people fighting cancer, people, prostate cancer came back, already had it, now it's come back. People who have lost children, people who lost one of two twins the other day. Someone lost a baby in a swimming pool. People in a cave. What do you do when you're in a cave? When there seems to be no way out and everything is dark, what are you going to do? If you're not in a cave now, you'll be in a cave. Well, think about the story of David. David gets anointed to be king. He's flying high. He thinks he's going to be king. Saul's time is over. He's going to be the new king. God and the prophet has anointed his head with oil. He wins a great victory against Goliath, and everybody is cheering his name. It says the women, they're dancing in the streets, shouting his name. It says in 1 Samuel 18, verse 7, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. And then verse 16, all Israel and Judah and loved David because he led them in their campaigns. He's at the top of his game. Everything's going well. He's killed lions and bears. Now he's killed Goliath. Everyone's crying out his name. The king gives him money, lets him marry his daughter. It's all going well. And then it begins to fall apart. You know the story. Saul gets jealous of David, twice hurls a spear at David. David has to run away, loses his job, loses his income, loses his safety and security. He's supposed to be king. He's running away. Loses his wife. Saul comes after him. Michal, his wife, helps him escape going out the window. Saul finds out that his own daughter is helping David escape, takes his daughter and gives her to someone else. So he's lost his wife. He's lost his family. He goes to Samuel. Samuel is the one who anointed him as king. Samuel is the one who says, God has told me. Samuel is the voice of God to him. But now he can't get to Samuel. Samuel's old, and then he dies. His mentor is gone. His connection to hearing the voice of God is gone. He's on his own. Samuel is the one who made him the legitimate king. Now David's on his own. He could just, the prophet made me king, not you. That voice is now gone. David goes to Jonathan, his best friend. And Jonathan gets in trouble for supporting David. And now the king is throwing a spear against Jonathan, his own son. So now David doesn't have his best friend anymore. So he's gone, he's lost his job, lost his family, lost his best friend. David goes to the Philistines. says in 1 Samuel 21, verse 10, that David fled from Saul and went to the Philistines, king of Gath. It's where Goliath had came from. He killed Goliath, who came from Gath. Now he's living with the Philistines. Has no place else to go. He's lost everything. Lost his family, his home, his job, his mentor. He's terrified to be there, so he goes insane, begins to foam at the mouth, and just goes crazy. And the king says, "What are you bringing this man to me for?" Verse 14 and 15, look at this man. He is insane. Why bring him to me? Am I so short of maniacs that you have to bring this fellow here to carry on like this in front of me? And so David in 1 Samuel 22 left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. He'd gone from the top to the bottom. Now he's in a cave. He was supposed to be the king living in a palace. Now he's in a cave. What kind of cave have you been in? The cave is where you end up when everything else is gone. All your props, all your crutches, all the things that help you sort of stay okay and keep your sanity are now gone. And you're in a cave of some kind. Maybe you've lost your family, your income, or your job. Those things that make you who you are now gone. And you're in a cave somewhere. It happens to all of us. You're not being one right now, but you'll be in one someday. Caves come to all of us. You have a wilderness time. Between David killing Goliath and when he finally became king, he had 10 years in the wilderness, running, hiding, in caves, being hated. What are you going to do when you're in a cave? Jesus was in a wilderness. Israelites in a wilderness for 40 years. They're in captivity in Babylon for 70 years. Moses up in the desert for 40 years. Wilderness times. Paul for 3 years. Wilderness times. When you wonder, you're supposed to be king. You thought you had a destiny. You thought God was with you and this was going to happen. Everything was working out. And then all of a sudden, you're in a cave. And what happened? What happened? And then it gets even worse. Saul finds out that the priests helped David. And he goes and he tells some of his army to go destroy, and all the priests are killed. 85 priests are killed. And all their families and all their children and all their animals. So now David has caused all the priesthood to be killed. So David goes back to live with the Philistines, with the enemies for 16 months, even marches with them. And there comes a time when the Philistines will not allow him to fight. How can we let this man who's been killing our people now march with us? And so the king forces David to go back. And David goes back to Ziklag, her town. And when he gets there, finds out that the Amalekites have come and have destroyed the whole town, taken all his family, all everyone's families, all their soldiers' wives and children were gone, and put the whole town to fire. Burned it all down. How much glory can you get? You've been in a cave. All the priests are gone. You've lost your family, your job, your mentor, everything you have, your best friends are all gone. And now you get back to your home, the only place you have left on the planet, and it's been destroyed, and your wife and children are gone, and everyone else's families are gone, and all his soldiers gathered around him. And it's his fault. And it says in 1 Samuel 30, verse 4, David and his men wept aloud until they had no strength to weep anymore. And his own men were picking up rocks ready to stone him. That's how low it got for David. His own men were going to stone him. What are you going to do? And now we come to one of the great verses in the Bible, 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 6, where it says, David encouraged himself in the Lord. Or David strengthened himself in the Lord. Or David found strength in the Lord his God. When you're in a cave and there's nothing else, David went and found strength in the Lord his God. At one time, back in chapter 27, it says David thought to himself. David thought to himself, one of these days I'm going to be destroyed by the hand of Saul. That's when we get in trouble, when you think to yourself. I think, it seems to me, it looks like. And we're looking at things from our own world. David wrote no psalms all those months with the Philistines. Not one psalm was written. He's thinking of himself. He's not thinking of God. And now in 1 Samuel 30, verse 6, he goes back to God. Something good is going to come out of this time. He's been in the wilderness, now he's been in a cave. And finally, it makes him go back to God. So maybe you're in a wilderness time. Maybe there's some good going to come out of your cave time. You're going to go back to God. And so we want to just unpack this phrase. What does it mean to find strength in the Lord? Secrets of the cave is the message here today. Number one, it's time to cry out. Psalm 142, verse 1. David wrote this psalm evidently when he was in the cave, not with the Philistines, in the cave. I cry aloud to the Lord, it says. I lift up my voice to the Lord for mercy. I pour out my complaint before him. Before him I tell my trouble. I cry to you, O Lord. When you're in a cave, it's time to go to God. When you're in a slump, when not on top of your game, when things are not working the way they ought to be working, and you wonder what happened, where did I go off track? You cry out to God. You go to God. It's not a sin to tell God how you really feel. Even Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, he's a son of God, but he is scared to death of the cross. And he calls out for the disciples, could you pray with me? I need help. God, Father, take this cup from me. He's in a cave. He's in a wilderness time. To cry out to God. It starts with reality. It's like that red dot on a sign at the mall that says, okay, you are here. You have to know where you are. You cannot deny reality. I'm in a cave. I'm in a slump. I'm in burnout. Here's where I am. This is not good. I'm here. Face the reality. Say, okay. And you cry out to God and say, God, here's where I am. Crying out is also saying, this is not okay. I'm not going to accept this. I'm not going to live with this. This is not my destiny. I'm not supposed to be in a cave. I'm supposed to be better than this. David knew he'd been anointed to be the king. The cave was not his destiny. The cave is not your destiny. Somewhere there's a mission for you to do and say, okay, God, where is this mission that you want me to do? Maybe you've heard a story about the man who went to a tattoo shop in Hong Kong. And of all the tattoos you could have, here was one that said, born to lose. He said, some people choose to put on their shoulder, born to lose. And the Chinese man said, before tattoo on body, tattoo on mind, born to lose. They've already accepted that they're a loser. They're always in a cave, and they're going to always be in a cave. They're forever going to be in a wilderness time. No, you cry out to God and say, this is not okay. I'm sure this is not where you meant for me to be forever, God. Someday I want you to pull me out of this cave. God is not a God of discouragement. If you are living in constant discouragement, it didn't come from God. Once in a while, there's going to be a low cave time. But ultimately, constant discouragement comes from the other side. God wants to give us hope to say there's something better coming for you on the other side. But it is okay to be honest with God, to say, God, looks like I'm in a cave. I'm in a wilderness time. Do you remember the story about the man who he trained all his life to train his great hunting dog? This dog was incredible. He could sniff out prey anywhere. So he took the most negative man in his life, his neighbor who was so negative all the time, took him hunting with him. They went out hunting, and sure enough, they found this animal and shot it, and shot the duck. And that duck, the moment that duck hit the water, that dog was in the water, walked across the water, went over and brought that duck and laid it at the man's feet. And the negative neighbor said, your dog can't swim, can he? There are just some people that are so negative. No matter what happens, no matter what good happens, they're in a cave. I'm not talking about that kind of person. It is okay once in a while to acknowledge that you're in a cave and you cry aloud to God. But we don't cry aloud forever. It's not constant complaining. We just come to God and say, I'm in a cave. Can you pull me out of this cave? Number 2, it says, do something. It says in verse 6, he strengthened himself in the Lord. But then in verse 7 and 8, he said to the priest, bring me the ephod. David inquired of the Lord, shall I pursue this raiding party that came after our people? Shall I go after them, or shall I just live with it and stay here? And the voice of God said, go, go. And so David takes his 600 men. He goes after them, and they get everything back. David gets his wives back, his children back. Everyone gets everything back. You have to do something. You cannot just pray. You cannot just sit in their trenches like we said with David and Goliath and pray that God will do something. David strengthened himself in the Lord, and then he went and did something about it. If your job is not making enough money, go find another job. If you're not doing well in school, then study. Go get somebody to help you and do better. If you're sick, go find someone who might be able to help you. Find a solution. Do something that God can bless. If you're fighting weight, then start walking. If your place isn't a mess, start cleaning up. If you're lonely, go to where people are and begin to make some friends. One writer was writing about marriages, about people who are disappointed. He said, don't just give up. Don't just accept this is the way it is. Say, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get 10% better in this year. Do something. Do something. Find out what is causing the slump and putting you in the cave, and just say, okay, I'm going to do something about that. I don't know if you have read the story about these guys who went up Mount Everest and then had the terrible disaster up there. Read Into Thin Air, one of the other books. One of the people who was out in the snow and the storm all night long, Buck Weathers, is a surgeon in Dallas. He was there, he was away, he was not in a cave, he was not in a tent, he was out there with this snow. Everyone thought he was dead. And then all of a sudden, he came walking out of the fog, still alive. He's lost some of his fingers and hands, and he's suffered, but he's alive. He would not give up. Not going to be done. He refused to die. Everyone thought he was dead. He thought he might die, but he said, I will not die. I'm going to find a way to hold on to life. And they came walking out of the storm. We've got to do something about it. I have people all the time who are in the cave. But then I say, how about this? They find a way to stop every option, every idea you give to them. No, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. There's got to be a time to do something. You hear about the witch doctor. He was standing there at a fork in the road, and he was throwing a stick. What are you doing? I'm trying to find out which fork I should take. Why are you throwing the stick so many times? I don't want to go where the stick is pointing. God will be whispering, go this way. This is the way out of the cave. Then you have to go. You have to do something. Don't just stay in the cave. One man named Thomas Carlyle, he wrote a book. For 2 years, he wrote a history book. And then he loaned it to a friend to read it, John Stuart Mill. And a servant took those sheets of paper and used it to make a fire. Oh, could hardly stand. He's in a cave. And then, what can I do? He's walking with a friend, and he saw a brickmaker, laying one brick at a time, building a wall. He says, I can do that. I can write one page at a time. And he wrote the whole book over again. Do something. One old man was sitting on his front porch in Kentucky, waiting for his first Social Security check to come. He's retired. You know, this is it? This is my life now, sitting here waiting for a check to come? And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. He made a list of all the good things he had, one of which was a wonderful recipe that his mother had for chicken. He went to the local restaurant and said, can I make this recipe? Had all these 11 spices and herbs. It became the town favorite and became, of course, Kentucky Fried Chicken. All started after he retired. Not going to sit here, not going to stay in a cave. I'm going to do something. I'm going to fight this off. Number 3, no shortcuts. No shortcuts. You can read in 1 Samuel 24. David is in a cave. Here comes Saul into the very cave. And all his soldiers said, get him now. This is your enemy. This is chance that God has given to you. David says, I will not do this. If God wants me to be king, he will make me king. I will take no shortcuts. I will not find a way to just do this on my own. God's going to do it in his way, in his time. I will not take a shortcut. Too many people take shortcuts. When you're in a cave and you feel alone and you feel down, and take a shortcut. You'll feel better. I'll get drunk. Feel better. I want to feel better. I want someone to love me. Go sleep with someone. Short-term, one-night stand. Short-term, shortcuts. Rather than the hard work of finding someone and loving each other and checking each other out. Shortcut. You need to make money rather than get training and go get a job and work. Shortcut. No shortcuts. When you're in a cave, wait for God, work with God to do the right thing. Do it the right way. No shortcuts. No shortcuts. And then finally, you find refuge in God alone. We've got to finish with this point. David encouraged God. David got encouragement from God on his own. There are times when you'll get it from people. God sometimes sent people to David. His family came sometimes. His soldiers would come. There are times, yes, absolutely, that God will use people, a counselor or family or people to bring you encouragement. Happened to me many times. I could tell you all kinds of stories. And there are times where God will use you to bring encouragement to someone else, to write a note, to make a phone call, send an email, put an arm around someone, take some food over to say, I'm with you, I'm on your side, I've got your back. Yes. But the message of this story, the secret of the cave, there are some times when you have to go to God alone. There's no one else. And you have to be able to go to the Bible, to go to God in prayer and say, God, there is no one else. I'm in a cave, I'm in a wilderness, and I need you today. And know that God will be there for you, and that God will come through, and that God will do good work for you. And the final message of this passage has to be, God does some of his best work in caves. Got that line from John Ortberg, and you're in a cave, and you're down. It can be where God will come to you, and God will strengthen you, and you will remember that day at the time when things turned around, when God began to give you grace and give you power, and God will do it. Remember Jesus Christ? He was in a cave, buried in a cave. Disciples all run away, but he comes out of that cave and gives you and me salvation. God does some of his best work in caves. If you're in a cave today, cry out to God. Do whatever he tells you to do, and know that a better day is coming. Your destiny is coming. David eventually became king. Your destiny is coming. Don't stay in a cave. God has something better for you. Go for it.